So anyway, this is part two of my reactions. There might be a little bit of overlap. I don't, because I'm going out of order on my notes. I'm also going to try to keep this to under 14 minutes, if possible, because that makes it a lot easier for me to actually to upload it up into YouTube. So when we left off talking about Morgan had pointed out all the differences in how controlled the use of theatrical scripts are in um, community theater. And then she noted that some of her colleagues would clip out one or two songs from the archived edition. They would film their editions and post them on YouTube. And the question, and it's clearly a copyright violation, clearly don't have the rights to do that. But what's the harm? What difference does it make? And also, this is what we're thinking about. Probably when those contracts were written, that whole possibility of taping and then posting and sharing and doing all that wasn't possible. And then we get Nicolette brought up that she likes to sing, and somebody sings and puts it up on there. Um, what would be the harm? But how about if she's somewhere and somebody decides to live stream it and captures it? You can capture when you're live streaming it or videoing it. It's captured in some way. It's posted. It goes viral, and all of a sudden it's valuable. Who owns it? What should the rules be? Should there be a default? If it's my performance, my expression, I by default own it, even if you captured it. What if you manipulated it or some way? Doug brought up a related issue that he takes photographs as well. He posts them to this free site. Somebody was saying that he downloaded and printed them out. Probably didn't put his name on it, that he liked it. So on the one hand, he's flattered. On the other hand, what if, Doug is the next Ansel Adams or something like that? Annie Leibovitz, who knows? And then this is early work, and all of a sudden there's all this value to that work. And how do we even go about thinking about that? What should be sort of the default mechanisms that we do? And also, how do we use these things? What's the right? What's the ethics? We've talked about that to some degree as well. What's the ethics? But we're really want to go, what should the rules be? What should the law be? Those kind of issues. And a lot of what we're talking about revolves around motivation, but should the law really be triggered by motivation? And I think what we have to say is where are the instruments of control, and when does control pass from one party to the other? When is that? What do I have to do as a consumer, a buyer of content, to say I now have full rights to it? As a distributor of content, I have X rights to it, and as a producer of content, I have Y rights to it. Now, all this, of course, as you understand, when file sharing came along, put all these issues on steroids. We were always able to share stuff, as I mentioned before. Sharing was built into Medium. Think about the whole concept of a free library where you go and share books. Don't just buy them. You don't buy them. You can just check them out of the library. But when they reside in the hard drive or in the cloud or somewhere in a digital format, you potentially can destroy the commercial product because of the network effect. I share with you, you share with your 20 friends, and something that's all. But that's the whole power of the internet as well. We've always been allowed to share stuff that we've legally obtained. But where's the limit of this? Are we destroying the commercial value? And then a lot of times, wouldn't we share or download songs or listen to songs that we would never buy? And like once again, I said that this is really, to some degree, this is books and movies has really hit hard. Not so bad in print. Images is a whole different thing, and that's another issue that I want to think about. Back in the 1800s, 1860s, 1870s, visual artists, painters, impressionists, they were all cultural icons. Now we have, and even as late as the 1950s and 60s with Jackson Pollock and Robert Rauschenberg and Warhol, Andy Warhol, these were folks who were talked about. They were in the cultural um, discussion. But that kind of work doesn't really work that well on the internet. It kind of gets washed out. It's not the same. That stuff you want to see in person. And consequently, there's this whole change that's being driven by new technology in that creation of content. So there's a couple of other points that I want to make sure I make. Got about 7 minutes to go. A lot of people have pointed out that people don't see the harm in stealing stuff, who's being hurt. As the Stephen Johnson points out, it's not clear that creative people are being hurt. And even if they were, maybe it was a time-bound moment when creative people could expect to earn a living from their creativity. Maybe a lot of people actually object to that, the commercialization of creativity, that you just do things to make money and it's not really all creative and it's derivative and it's terrible. And although music has been hurt, this is a golden age of television with Netflix. There's more scripted TV being made now than ever, way more than ever. A lot more books being published. I mean, Loyola, the communications department, we publish 15, 18 books a year. That's kind of unheard of, and it's all on demand and it's distributed, and all of that comes from new technology. So it's not clear, although music has been hurt, and with the movies, that's up in the air. I do know that video was a huge boom to Hollywood. So it's not clear at all that with the sharing and that kind of thing, that there will be a drop off in creative production. And Johnson, says, oh, well, live, it's marketing for live and whatever. It's complex from creative industry to creative industry. And then there's, all sorts of, I'll just run through them. There's the issue that Netflix consumes a lot of bandwidth. So net neutrality on some ways is a subsidy to Netflix. But if you didn't have net neutrality from the last module, as we know, that there could be, one of the providers would just throttle competitors and that would make it a monopoly service. Already, a lot of the power is in the hands of the distributor, Netflix, Spotify, that kind of thing, at the expense of the artist, and the consumer benefits as well. We all know that stealing is bad, but sharing has always been good. And what should define the line between stealing and sharing? What really drove Napster out of business is not only legally got driven out of business because it was deemed stealing, but it got overrun by viruses and pop-ups, and maybe that's the way to do it. Maybe there's some technological tweak that can be done that, depending on your level of use, is your speed, the quality, all those kind of things. A couple other quick points. For the frame of reference we're trying to get for the class, there's also the issue of multiple devices. Now, some people said, how about, licensing and copyright that provides for X amount of sharing? And, as we all know, that as devices proliferate, we want to be able to own our content on all those devices. As that happens, and in the delivery, and we talk about the distribution, I've never understand why Redbook is cheaper than streaming, but it is. And I don't know if it's a time factor on that. But does the proliferation of devices that I want to watch my content on my phone, my iPad, my computer, my watch, whatever, how does copyright law account for that? Used to be you had a book, you went to the movies, whatever. And then there's the new stuff um, inserting your college logo into your Facebook page, and how on the flip side do I want to manage my creative content? And finally, I'll stop with what Emily pointed out astutely is the halo effect of sharing. Sometimes I share, and this was also in Daniel's video in a commercial negative way, but I share because I want to have an audience for me, not because I think the audience is going to pay, but because I want to have that audience. And then there's finally, the last point, and I only got about 2 minutes to go or less. Yeah, I got about 2 minutes to go. There's the last point of new things being copyrighted. So I know I could copyright a trademark or a logo or that kind of thing, but how about a hashtag? Should we be able to trademark hashtags, even though the hashtag, clearly is a mechanism to share? But if I create a really cool hashtag, should I be able to control that use? So these are the issues: ease of replication, ease of duplication, commercial value, control, incentive, motivation, audience that are impacted each time a new medium comes along. And although we went from more sharing and more sharing, more sharing, at the end, there's so ubiquitous sharing that maybe we've gotten out of balance, and the distribution of power between creator, distributor, and consumer has been skewed. Okay, I think that just about wraps me up. It's about 13 minutes, and I'll stop here.